Do not start an AI automation agency in 2025. I've personally built and sold a $2.6 million a year agency, made over $1 million in 2024 with AI. I won the Skool Games and got to meet Alex Hormozi. If you're skeptical of everyone telling you to build an AI automation agency, stick around and I'll tell you why not to, what to do instead, the story behind how I developed my own AI automation that I sold for $5,000 without sales calls, and then stick around to the end and I'll show you a dead simple plan that you can follow. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about why I do not think that you should start an AI automation agency like all the gurus online are telling you to do, because there are some reasons why you might want to create an AI automation business. And the first reason is because you really want to. If you have a passion to build an AI automation business and that's what your dream is, then by all means, go ahead and do so. That is an easy way to make a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of businesses that need you to come in and help build them automations to be more efficient. However, I don't necessarily think that is the best way. I also don't think it's as much fun, because when you really think about what an AI automation agency is it's not really an AI business. You're not using AI as a way to create leverage for yourself so that you can make more money with less time. In fact, what you are selling is your time. You are selling your hours to someone else to help them create leverage for their business. They're the ones who are using AI, not you. Ideally, if you want to be successful, you are getting good at building a team and you are getting good at building processes so that you can scale your business and get more clients and make more money. And so if you're really interested and you have a passion for building a team and building processes so that you can build a scalable service business, then by all means, an AI automation business might be what you want to build. But I definitely wouldn't fool yourself into thinking that you're building an AI business. You're not. You're building a service business. But I do want to make one thing clear, and that is that while you're building your AI business, while you're building AI products and services, you might need to do some sort of done for you work for a client, but that doesn't mean that you're building an agency. So you can easily, by yourself, work for clients. You can have 2 to 3 really good clients who are giving you some sort of monthly retainer, and you can work for them and you can build them things while you're trying to decide what products to build so that you can make money if you need it. But that's a lot different than trying to go out there and build an AI automation business that you are trying to scale with a team and a process. So again, if you're trying to find the most straightforward way to make a lot of money in the AI space, not as an AI company, and you don't mind building a team and a process and trying to scale that up, then an AI automation business might be for you. But from my experience building a $2 million a year tech agency where we built software, it wasn't AI, but it was essentially a service-based business where I had 25 employees. This was not a fun business by any means. Yes, we made a lot of money. I made a lot of money. I was able to sell that business and that was really awesome. But going back and thinking about how I built that, it was a ton of work. I didn't have a whole lot of fun. And I think there's a much smarter way of going about building a business with AI. With an agency, you always have the problem that you're always trying to get more clients. You're always losing clients. You're always trying to hire people. When you have a lot of clients, you're always getting rid of people. When you don't have as many clients, you're always putting out fires when your clients are upset. And it really just wasn't a very fun business to run, especially if you're coming to the AI space because you think it's super interesting and you want to build something super unique and interesting that you can actually sell. In that case, don't start an agency. All right, so then let's talk about what are the 3 different types of AI businesses that you could build. Now, I'm sure there are more than 3, but I want to cover the 3 most obvious ones. And the first one is a service. And I don't mean done for you work. I mean, you create some sort of service that you use AI and AI automation, or you even build out a SaaS product to deliver that result to the client without having to do the work over and over again, without having to have a team. You can start a 1-person business where you have some sort of automation or technology where you can deliver consistent results to a client and then charge them a monthly fee. So there's several members inside of my no-code architects community who are doing just this. One of them creates content. So they have automations that run and help them create content automatically using automation and AI. And there's a few different variations where they provide topics or they do a few different recordings. And then their service automatically takes in those recordings, processes them, does any sort of editing that needs to be done. It can repurpose all of this content all automatically into all sorts of different formats. And then all they have to do is publish this content to social media and everyone is happy. Everyone wants content. Nobody wants to spend the time on it. And so if you can develop a service that is automated so that you don't have to do all of the work, then you can create a very attractive offer to busy professionals where all they have to do is pay you and you make all the content, you do all the work, and you deliver it to social media, except you're not actually doing the work. You're having AI automation do it, or you could have a SaaS product. And then that's how you build a scalable service. Now, the next thing that you can do is that you can actually build out either a automation template where you build out some automation that somebody wants. The same automation that you are using to power your service is something that you could sell as an automation template. And this is a little bit different. Whereas instead of you setting up the service and running it for someone else, you find somebody that's looking for that automation that wants the same result, but they don't want to pay an ongoing monthly fee. They would rather just buy the automation. They'd like to learn how to use it. They'd like some coaching on how to set it up. And then from there, they just pay a fee and then they can use it themselves month after month. And then all you have to do is charge them usually a much higher fee than you would normally charge for the service because they're getting your intellectual property. Once they have it, they don't need you anymore. So you're charging a premium for the actual automation and the expertise that you have to help them learn how to use it. The content engine database, which was the automated system that I sell, I was able to sell this for $5,000 per install. I didn't even actually do the install. Every time somebody purchased it, they paid $5,000. And the cool thing about this was that once I really got this dialed in, I didn't even actually have to do any sales calls. People would just see my content. They would find the landing page. They could watch a video that explained how everything worked and then had a bunch of different descriptions on how it worked and when the calls were. And over time, I knew all the questions. So they could just get to the bottom and there was a purchase, they could buy it, and then I would just see the purchases come in. And the system that I was selling looked a lot like this. It was the content engine database. This is a new version that I'm not actually selling. I'm using this privately, but it looked a lot like this. All it really was a simple but powerful content organization system. So one thing to keep in mind is that even though we have all of this fancy technology in AI and AI automation, what people don't always realize is that the problems that people have day to day are often a lot more simple than we'd like them to be. As entrepreneurs, as builders, we like to build things that are interesting and complex to us. But what I found is that the most simple solution is usually the best one. And the most powerful feature of the content engine database was it just kept things very organized. It automatically created documents that you might need for your content. If you needed to write a script, it would automatically create the document. It would automatically create all the folders that you needed. It would automatically link to the video so that you could give feedback to your video editor. Yes, it did do a lot with AI in terms of content repurposing and taking one piece of content and turning it into a lot of other pieces of content. In the end, when you're a busy professional and you've got a team and you're just trying to get things done, it was all of the organization that provided the most initial value. Then once you had that, the rest of the stuff was valuable as well. But it was just that simple organization that provided all the value. So when you're planning out your automation templates or your automation products that you're going to sell that someone can actually install, just make sure to keep it simple. And I'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment, how I was able to build out this product going from a $10 a month product to a $999 to a $2,000 and then finally to a $5K product. Now, the third AI business that you could start is just information. You can sell training. And there's so many different ways that you could do this. A lot of times when we think about this, we think about starting a community. This is what I have. You have a community and then you create courses and then you sell that information to people. But there's a whole other host of businesses out there. In fact, people or entrepreneurs are often the hardest people to sell to. They're the least experienced. They're just getting started and they have a lot of demands. They want a lot. They want to consume a lot of content. They're not as used to actually acting on all of that advice. There are a lot of other types of companies that you can sell to. You can sell to medium-sized businesses that are just learning how to use AI. They might not even be using ChatGPT yet. You could go into a business and teach them how to do the basics of AI. Or you could go into large corporations like the Fortune 500 and sell training into those types of companies as well. And with those types of companies, you can obviously charge a lot more. You're going to have to know like how to get into companies like that. It's usually like, you know, somebody, or you know how to network, or you've got a lot of corporate experience and you're able to get yourself into those companies. But right now, most companies all across the board, from small to medium to large, they have really no experience with AI at all. They might have just played with it at home, but the business is not really necessarily using them. So these are easy targets for selling information. And so right now, I'm actually able to make money from selling automation templates. I'm actually building out a new SaaS product right now as well. And I'm also able to sell information, because the interesting thing is that building templates and learning how to help companies implement them and selling the information go hand in hand. Because whenever you're working with a company, whenever you're building templates, you're also interacting with their team. You're also talking with them, you're learning, you're helping fix problems. You're probably using the product yourself, and you're learning expertise along the way. And so as long as you have information to sell, there's no reason why you can't package that up and sell it at the same time. All right, so now let me talk to you about the journey that I took to build out the $5,000 product that I sold, which was the content engine database, which was very profitable. And I was able to build this business up to anywhere from $40,000 to $75,000 a month. And I was able to do that consistently just by selling a one-off product that people could buy. And again, I didn't even have to take sales calls to do this. I just made content. People found it. They thought it was interesting. They researched it. Now, I did have some sales calls, but a large majority of all of the purchases were just made without any sort of sales call. So let's talk about the journey I took to actually build this out. And I do want to focus in on a lot of the mistakes I made, because I could have made this journey a lot faster, and I could have done it in a much smaller amount of time than it actually took. So I mentioned before that I used to run a tech consulting agency. We were doing $2.6 million a year, and I had a team of 25. And it was after I sold this company that I basically started over from scratch. I went from a team of 25 to one person, which was quite a shock. And I started to realize that, hey, this business that I built, which was a great business, took me 12 years to build. And even though I had made a lot of money, it wasn't the kind of money where I could just never do anything again. So even though I had plenty of money, I could take as long as I wanted to make this work. I did eventually have to make something work, or I would have run out of money. I started to think to myself, well, I definitely don't want it to take 12 years. Basically, the way I did this was I just did really good work. I did do a lot of blogging, so I was able to become a thought leader in the space that I was in. But it took 12 years to build this business. And I knew that this next business needed to go much faster. And that's really around 2018 when I started to see all of this stuff around content. So I started to see Gary Vee talk about content and how important it was. I really didn't have any idea how any of this worked. I also started to get into the internet marketing space, where people were talking about how you could make all of this money really quick. Turns out that is possible, but you really have to know what you're doing. And I didn't. So I started to see Gary Vee. I saw this dream of making a ton of money, and I just jumped in. I didn't know how it was going to work, but I just started creating content like a madman. Actually, now it seems kind of mild what I was doing. I was creating one post a week on LinkedIn. I started creating videos, and then I started a bunch of businesses, probably 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't even know how many businesses I actually tried to create. While I was creating all these businesses, I was getting good at creating content. I was actually enjoying the content creation process. I should show you some of the videos that I used to make. They were pretty funny. But I started to enjoy the process, except that it was a pain. It was really hard to create a lot of content, to keep it organized, and to work with other people and get all of this done. So I took all of my technology experience and I started to build out a little Airtable database. I had used this in my previous company a little bit, and I started to build out some automations. I was using Zapier at the time. Again, very simple stuff where I was just creating folders so that I didn't have to create them. I was keeping track of the status. And then the funny thing is that I was having so much fun that it was about this time that I got onto TikTok. And I started just making videos about the new system I was making. And because content was a pain for everyone else, and then all of a sudden, these videos that had nothing to do with the business I was trying to make were going viral. I had videos that were doing 100,000 views. When you're coming from LinkedIn, I mean, these are really big numbers. In LinkedIn, if you get 1,000 views on your video, you did really well. But when I started to get 100,000 plus views on these videos, where I was talking about my content systems, a little light bulb that went off, and I started to realize, oh, there's something here. I should pursue this. Now, the biggest mistake that I made was not listening to these signals even more. I should have gone all in. And there were times that I did. But essentially what ended up happening was I started to develop a following, not about the business that I was talking about. In fact, nobody cared about that. They just really thought these automations I was building were super cool. And so I started to build out this audience. And then I said, well, how about I start a community? This community was built on Mighty Networks. I did a little webinar. It was like an hour long where I showed people this technology. And I said, hey, if you jump into this community, then I'll give it to you. And that community was only $10 a month. And within a few days, I had well over 100 people in this community, which I thought was really cool. This was the first time that I had some sort of reaction like this, where I made a video, it was cool. This is where I started to realize the promise of the internet. All of a sudden, I was making $1,000 a month, which was not a lot of money. I was making more in the other parts of my business, which actually became a distraction. But I started to make some money and it was recurring, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then I started to have meetings with this group. And this is where I kind of got distracted, is that I started to have these calls with people. Guess what? They weren't really all that impressed with the automations when they actually got their hands on them. So when I made the video, they thought it was super cool. But when we got on a Zoom call and they were using it, probably only 2 or 3 people actually used these automations. Everyone else had a list of things that they wanted, which it could not do. And when I thought about the things that they were asking for, they sounded like really big projects. And I had all of this other work I was doing over here. And so I started to get pretty overwhelmed. And what I did was I almost sabotaged this business. I almost decided like I didn't want it. There was something about it where I had all of these people, 100 plus people that were all asking for something. And I didn't feel like I had the ability to deliver on the promise. And so I actually got kind of sour on this business and I went back to the other business. And then this community just kind of started to die off, except that I still loved making these automations and I still liked making content. And so it just kept happening. So I'd create more videos and those videos would go viral. And even though I lost interest in the idea, I would get interested in it again. And I just started having all of these viral videos over and over again. And I got kind of addicted to building out these content systems, advancing them, making these videos, getting people interested. And then finally, so many people were clicking on my link to book a call with me, not to talk about my previous business, but to talk about how they could implement these systems, that I started to sell done for you solutions where I would come in and I would build out custom solutions. And believe it or not, I was able to sell these systems for $15,000 per install. And then this is where I learned my next painful lesson, which was when you have a template and you sell it for 15 grand, that's a lot of money. People are expecting a lot for that. When the template doesn't do what they think it was going to do because I didn't explain it well enough, they want all of this custom work. That custom work ends up cutting into your 15 grand. And it just makes you tired. I wasn't having fun trying to implement this for people. And the other problem with it was as well is that the scope wasn't very clear. So what they purchased wasn't outlined in enough detail. I got myself into a bad situation. I was able to get myself out and it was still profitable, but it wasn't very fun. I wasn't enjoying things. And so I got to this spot where I almost closed everything down again. And there was a point that I actually stopped selling it and people were still booking calls. So they would still see my videos. I was still having fun making the videos. I was still having fun making the system itself, but people would book calls and I would say, no, I'm not actually selling this. And that was super strange to people. They were like, what? I don't get it. Like, what's going on here? And to be honest, I couldn't answer the question myself. And so with a little bit of soul searching, I just realized it's like, it wasn't the product or the potential of the product. I just wasn't being very smart about how I was going about selling this product and packaging it and pricing it and doing it in a way that was scalable so that people could learn how to use the template without me doing it over and over again. Now, it sounds simple now, but all I did was I made a much more simple system. And instead of doing the install for them, I made videos on how to do it. And then I put it into a course. And it was at this point that I moved to Skool to deliver the course material. This time I sold it for $9.99. It was totally scalable, had tons of happy customers. And I sold like 50 of these in like a week. And so everything was actually going pretty well at that point, except that I kept getting this common request. Everybody wanted auto posting, and it really made the solution a lot more complex. I was able to get it done, but it made the product a lot more complex and there were a lot more failures. And the people that were buying this version weren't as happy as the people that didn't have the auto posting. So I got smart. I figured out a better way to do the auto posting. I've switched platforms, made it more simple, and then I re-released the product. And again, you're going to see the common thread here is that I kept simplifying the product. Every time that I released this product and it was too complicated because I thought it was cool, it would cause problems. But every time I simplified it, I reduced features. I would reduce things that I thought people had to have. And every time I did that, I was able to increase the price. So I think I went to $1,500, and then I went to $2,000, and then I came up with the final version that I was selling, which was KEDB Extreme, and I was selling Extreme for $5,000 a pop. All right, so now let's jump into the most important part, which is like, how do you actually make money? How do you get started with selling a AI automation service or a product, a template, or information? Now, the way I did this for the content engine database was that I would just create content, essentially just demoing it. Because AI automation is cool enough, sometimes when you just demo something, it's interesting enough to get enough traffic so that you can make enough sales. But I think that's changing nowadays. If all you're doing is doing demos of your products online on YouTube videos or on TikToks, you're going to have some that do well, but you're not going to consistently do well in this day and age because people are starting to expect a lot more. In order for things to go viral, they really want to learn. They want to know how to do this themselves. So I'm going to break down a better path that I'm now following for myself, which I think is the blueprint for how to make money if you want to sell services, or if you want to sell products, or if you want to sell information online. Now, some people are going to have a problem with this because it's too simple, and they're going to want to find ways of complicating this, and they're going to want to come up with excuses as to why they shouldn't do this or why it's risky. But here's what you're going to want to do. First and foremost, you do have to pick a topic. And usually we're going to pick something that we're interested in. And online, typically the three main things that you want to at least niche into is either the make money niche, or the health niche, or the relationship niche. So if you've got a passion that's within one of these three things, that is key, because these are the three main things that people care about. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to promise like crazy results in one of these three things. Like you don't have to say, hey, I'm going to make you $1 million, or I'm going to turn you into the most fit person ever, or I'm going to, help you build relationships like nobody other. It doesn't mean you have to do that. But the thing is that you want to start to build some expertise while you build out your solutions. You want to pick one of these, and then all you need to do is start to build prototypes. Come up with different products that you would use yourself. You can either pick something that you would use, or you can ask people what they want, okay? You've really got those two choices. And if you don't want to go ask people, then just start to build stuff that you would like. And now here's the kicker. When you build this stuff, you don't want to build it and then show people. You want to build it live. Every time you go to build, every time you want to experiment with something, you're just going to record it, okay? And you're going to use that as your content. So whatever you're going to build, you just sit down and you hit record. You can edit it later. You don't have to do an intro or an outro. You can do the intro and the outro later once you have the recording, and you can edit it. If you made big mistakes that you don't want people to see, you can always take those out. But I encourage you to keep in as much as you can. You're going to get better a lot faster. And the main thing that this is going to allow you to do is that it's going to allow you to create marketing material, and it's going to allow you to build product at the same time. And in that process, you're going to learn a lot, and people are going to see you learning a lot, and people are going to start to see you as the expert. Now, if you're starting out from zero and you have no expertise, obviously this is going to take a little bit of time before you learn a few things and you can actually implement things. But this is going to be the fastest way, because if you try to create marketing material separately from creating a product, you're going to be spending so much time on one or the other that you won't do the other. So you're going to start to build, and you're going to release it as content in one action, and you're going to direct people to some sort of community. I use Skool. I recommend Skool. And every single one of your calls to action, not necessarily in the video itself, I mean like on your social media profile. Of course, in the content itself, you can push people to your community, but on all of your social media profiles, you're going to send people to a free school where they can potentially get access to your product. And now one thing that people are asking me is like, hey, if I'm recording myself building the product as my marketing, can't people just copy the product? And of course they can, but they can copy you anyway. This is the world of AI. I mean, if you're watching any of the videos these days, every video is basically, look what I can build, which is a copy of something that somebody else did. Look what I can build in like 3 minutes. So you have to understand the true value of the marketplace today is not in the product itself. It's in the ability to have an audience. So when you build content, you're going to start to build an audience. The true value that you're going to build, the goodwill you're going to build, this is the true value. Because if you start to build the audience, regardless of whether or not one of these products works, and most likely your first and second and your third and your fourth product isn't going to be good enough to sell anyways. But if you're making content that is interesting because people are learning, they're seeing what you build, they're seeing the mistakes you make, they're seeing how you think about things, that's going to help you build the audience. And then you can continue to sell to them over time. And along the way, you're going to get all this feedback about what products to build, how to pivot, what you need to do, which is going to continue to make your product better, you're learning better, and you're just going to continue to build this audience. And then at some point, you're going to have a good prototype that is going to be very easy to sell into this community that you've been building. So now there's all sorts of little nuances. You could obviously have small products inside the Skool community. You could actually have a paid community, but I recommend just keeping it free and even having some of the products inside of the Skool community for free. You really want to just build the audience, build a group of people that you can talk to, build your expertise and build the audience. That's going to be the most valuable thing. The most valuable thing that I have done over the last few years is build the audience. Now I'm able to work with a small subset of those people and make a living from it. But I can promise you, if you're afraid to build in public because you're afraid somebody is going to steal your idea, well, the truth is, people will just never know what your idea or product ever was. Even if they did steal it, they could do that anyway. So let's say you did create a cool product. You didn't tell anybody about it. It's super cool. And then you put it on the market. Nobody knows about you except the 2 or 3 people that want to steal your idea. And then they just throw it into ChatGPT. They throw in the screenshot and they're like, hey, help me build this. It's like, here's how you do it. 1, 2, 3. Now they're taking your idea. They can go give it to their audience, but you have no way to pivot from here because you weren't building your audience along the way. You really have no one to sell it to anyway. And if you just build as your marketing, then you don't have to worry about doing 2 different things, because building a good product and marketing as 2 separate actions, it's very difficult. Typically what I see happens is that people start with their marketing, then they get busy and they're building their product, then they flip over here and then their marketing suffers and they're just like constantly flipping back and forth. And it creates this real jarring effect in your business, and your profits go like this because you're just bouncing back and forth. You never gain any consistency. Whereas in this case, your product and your marketing are truly just one activity. The only other thing that you would ever have to do is basically customer service, which is kind of marketing as well. Customer research really is marketing. Customer service, customer research. So obviously when you're delivering the product, you're going to have to ask people if they like it, they're going to complain about it. But you can just make this one action. Customer service, marketing, product, it's all one thing, and your business can scale. You're not worried about somebody copying you. The best way to make it hard to copy you is that you have an audience and you have a deeper understanding than most people, right? So if you look at a market segment, this is like a new entrepreneur. They're on the outside here. They just have this idea they think is cool, but it's not real. It's only when you get deep customer insights that you start to build a better product. And so if you've got an audience, you're talking directly to people. And what you know here is much more valuable than somebody new to the market that's right here. And if somebody's copying you, they're copying 6 months ago, whereas you're building from here. You don't even need to worry about your competition if you're doing this. You don't even need to worry if they're copying you. In fact, you hope that they are, because the true advantage in this marketplace is not the product itself. It's having an audience and customer insight. That's all you need in today's marketplace. That's the winning equation. And you want to stay focused on this. Create, build, market, all in one action, and I promise it'll work. The only thing that you have to be smart about is doing this long enough and consistently enough to where you make something that people really want, right? Often creating something cool takes longer than we think. In fact, it always does, right? They say Rome wasn't built in a day. We all have that exciting idea, but it's going to take many more iterations along the way. So instead of building that AI automation agency that's going to take you off here where you're building a team and you're building all these processes and you're putting out all of these fires, find yourself 1 or 2 clients that are aligned with the product you want to build anyway. Learn how to build, learn a bunch of insights that you can pour into this project that you build publicly. So even if they don't want your products, they're still going to see that you're smart and that you can build, and they're going to hire you anyway. If you want to build your own AI automation products, make sure to jump into the No Code Architects community. I've got an AI automation business course, an N8N quick start guide, courses on Make and Airtable, and a content system that'll help you create and scale content. We've got calls almost every single day and sometimes two. It's an engaged group, and we promise to solve 100% of all of our members' tech questions. I'd love to see you inside the group. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.